Hey, hi everyone, it's Steve from Decodes. So, what you're going to see today is MCP, Model Context Protocol. So, today in today's video, I'll teach you on what are the architecture flows and what are the concepts that you might need to know MCP as an organizational level. Unlike the other videos that you see out online, I'm not going to teach you how to create a server and then add it to the cloud and use the server, because as an organizational level this might not be a really good use case, and generally they don't use it like that. So moving on to what an MCP is, you have to understand what MCP is. So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. So what it does, so it so in a simple term, let me give you with an example. So let's say you love a hotel and you only have food from that hotel. But the sad thing about that hotel is it keeps moving from one place to other. So let's say it's here today. So the next day it will go from here to here. And you won't know where it is, right? So one day you spot it, okay, I'm hungry, I'm gonna have a food from here. So you have food, then the transaction happens. But the next day you have lost it. You don't know where it is. So what do? You can't access it, right? So this is what was happening traditionally, called function calling. Let's say you have a function called add. It does add two numbers from A and B. So let's say this add has changed from add to addition. You won't know, right? It has been changed to addition unless it's explicitly told to you. This is what was happening. So you have to keep track of what are the changes that happens and change it accordingly. But with model context protocol, you don't have to do anything. So what model context protocol does differently from function calling is, let's say you have hotel and you here. You hotel. So what you do, you assign a guy, let's call him a watchman. So what you do is you tell the watchman that keep track of this hotel and tell me whatever changes happens. Like let's say what he does is, first he notices where the hotel is. So he knows the hotel's position and what it has to offer. So next day they have changed the location. So watchman, what he does is he keeps track of this hotel and he knows now where the hotel is and what to do. So whenever you are hungry, now say you don't have to search for the hotel directly. You just have to contact the watchman. And you know where the watchman is, right? So you will contact him and he'll give you the list of where the hotel is and what all it has. So in the same way you can access the hotel and get the answer, like whatever you want. So the same way happens to the function we discussed before, like add. First, the server has a function called add. What the client does is his client notices it and keeps it in storage, like it has something called add. Then what happens, it has been changed from add to addition. Oh well, good, then it has been changed. So what happens is this add has been replaced with addition. So this way it has the latest thing that is being stored in the server, and whenever you want to access it, you don't have to keep track of what has been changed, you just have to access it. It does the whole job for you. So this is something simple with one example, but let's say if you take an organizational perspective, this is, you will might have millions of connectors and which does a lot of small tasks or very big tasks. So you don't have to manually look into every single thing that has been changed and manually change it. When if you deploy an MCP server, it and the client, it's gonna take care of the whole thing as a whole wrapper. So moving on to its architecture. It has three main components. One is host, the client, and the server. So to make you understand better, host is basically you, the client is basically the watchman, and the server is the hotel. What does the host do? host is basically the AI powered application or the machine, local machine that hosts multiple clients. So let's say this is the host and you have multiple MCP clients. So one host can have multiple watchmen to look into multiple hotels, right? This is the same way. So this is an MCP client 1, this is client 2, this is client 3. So this is the host. And now what is a MCP client? MCP client is basically a watchman that keeps track of what your server does. So let's say you want to look into a particular server and know what all changes has been happened or how to access the server. So what it does is you don't have to directly contact the server. MCP client does it for you. It is basically the bridge between the host and the server. It maintains the synchronized communication between them. So let's say you want to connect it to the MCP server. So what is an MCP server? An MCP server is basically something that hosts a lot of functions. Let's say you have a lot of tools. Let's say you have a tool to get a weather, you have a tool to do addition, you have a tool to do subtraction, you have a tool to do multiplication. All these tools can be clubbed into one server and being deployed. The way you can access is you have to communicate with the MCP client, and MCP client communicates with the server, and the server runs the tool that it has and gets you the result. So this way the whole thing is done synchronously and you don't have to worry about what is in the server. MCP client will take care of it for you. So the next thing is MCP has two main layers, data layer and transport layer. So data layer is basically you don't have to dive deep into the data layer. You just know that whatever communication that happens between the client and the server runs in JSON RPC 2.0. So this is the communication that takes place between the client and the server. So the next is the main part of transport layer. So transport layer has two subparts called STD, IO, streamable, HTTP. So what does this two stand for? So in a lot of videos that you have seen, you might have seen that STDIO, people create their server and deploy it as an STDIO. So when does this happen and when does a streamable HTTP take place? Server is deployed in the same machine as the client. So let's say you create the server in the same machine and then you host it, and then in the same machine you have a client. So when this happens, you use STDIO. But let's say you create a server and deploy it in some cloud application, let's say AWS or Azure, that time it's going to be a streamable HTTP. You have to define clearly in the client that this is how the communication is going to happen and in the server as well. Next, let's see how the communication between the client and the server happens. We have user, client, and the server. So this server has additional tool and weather tool. So let's say now the user asks a question, what is the weather in Bangalore? So what happens is first the client communicates with the server. So this step is called initialization. So in this initialization, you define what type of communication is going to happen here. So here we tell this, okay, we are going to communicate, this is how the communication is going to happen with JSON RPC 2.0, and here you're going to define the communication protocol, and then you're going to set up. So I am the client who's going to set up the communication with you. So this all comes under the initialization phase. So here you tell the server that we are going to communicate in JSON RPC. Then we are going to have this communication protocol, and then this is the client that is going to communicate with you. So after this happens, the server responds with a 200 message telling, yeah, I acknowledge that this is how the communication is going to happen. Yeah, you can go ahead and communicate with us. Then the client gets the tools list. What are the tools available in the server? So this way, this client gets to know what are the tools available, and it gets the latest updated tools that are available in the server. So this way you don't have to track what is the latest thing. So whatever is being updated will automatically reflect to the client. And then here what we are trying to do, get the weather in the Bangalore. So what it does is we need to access the weather tool. So what it does is it sends the request to the weather tool and asks for what is the weather in the Bangalore. So it responds with, okay, it's around 29 degrees Celsius. This 29 degrees Celsius is combined with LLM and responds back to the user natural language. So this is how the whole communication between the user, client and the server happens. So this way you don't have to keep track of whatever happens. Everything is handled by the client and the server. I think we are good to know. We have looked into the how architecture of an MCP work, how the communication between the client and the server works, and how what are the transport layers that you need to define and how to define. So in the next video, we'll look into how to create an MCP server and how to host it and access the MCP server using an MCP client. That's it, folks. If you find that this video was useful, you can obviously give a thumbs up. If you have any doubt regarding MCP that you want me to clear, I'll drop you a mail down in the description. You can always contact me through mail. uh, Stay tuned for the next video where I showcase you on how to create and deploy an MCP server and connect it with it. Thank you.